Right. Okay, so everybody needs to understand that this is just the beginning. This is a benchmark. This is a moment in history that we haven't had in over 50 years. They brought two people forward, top brass of our military. And to be honest with you, they've jumped into this recently too. Now they are in a position to know. But remember, the UFO programs are often protected by special access program protection.
Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. For the first time in around 50 years, Congress held a public hearing on the subject of UFOs, more commonly known today as UAPs. In this video, we are not going to discuss what UFOs are. Do they exist? Aliens. This is not about that. This is about the implications of such a hearing going forward. What does this mean for the overall subject of UFOs in terms of the investigation of them, taking them seriously? What takeaways can we get from Congress actually holding an official hearing on this subject? Let's tackle this right now. Okay guys, first things first, if you guys can please like, share, follow, and subscribe to all my social media platforms, including YouTube, especially YouTube. That's my biggest platform for these videos. And when you see me do this at the end of my videos, you'll see the videos that I'm talking about, because on Facebook, I don't have the software to put those videos on. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch my videos on there as well. That would be great, very helpful. Okay, so highly controversial subject, very much very stigmatic subject. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, or more commonly known today as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, Congress held a meeting, a very highly important meeting yesterday, May 17th, 2022. First of its kind in almost 50 years. We're not here to discuss what UFOs are. Do they exist? What are they? Are aliens real? Are these aliens? The history of alien abductions. It's not about the totality of the UFO subject. That would take hours and hours to discuss. This video is going to focus on the implications and the takeaways of such a serious meeting held by Congress. All the takeaways that we can get from an official government and Congress meeting on the subject. We're going to discuss the implications of this going forward in this video here. So without further ado, let's get into this. Now, in my opinion, this subject, obviously there's a big stigma surrounding this subject, UFOs, unidentified flying objects. And for any people that have actually done, any type of research, any looking into it, a lot of research, not just a Johnny come lately, you will know that, okay, UFO, what does it mean? Unidentified flying object. And in the most recent years, it has been changed the definition to take it more seriously, the subject, to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. I agree with that, because we don't actually know if these objects in the sky are flying or if they are objects. We don't know what they are. Okay, so I like the idea of changing this to UAP. So if I reference UAP, you will know that it stands for unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, there's a big stigma around this subject, obviously. This is not to do with aliens. This is not to do with little green men. This is not to do with alien abductions. This is not to do with what are they. This is about the hearings themselves and the implications going forward. Now, this is obviously a very, very good, not first step, but a good initial step. There has been many steps to get to this point, dating back, probably a good 10 years ago. One of the first meetings or hearings that was done by Stephen Bassett in 2013 with the Citizens hearing on disclosure. Obviously it wasn't with Congress. I don't know if it was with the Senate, but there were prominent UFO researchers such as Richard Salas, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe. They all testified in front of whoever it was they were testifying in front of. That was one of the first, major hearings that have happened, in the last several decades. That was a big monumental step for the purposes of getting this topic into government. And then about 5 years ago, say what you want about the guy, Tom DeLonge, with his formation of To the Stars Academy, recruiting guys like Luis Elizondo, who was the head of the Pentagon's ATIP program. Steve Justice, a former director of advanced systems at Lockheed. Christopher Mellon, a former deputy secretary of defense for the US government. They all came together to investigate this subject from a more scientific, rational perspective. That, finally for the first time, major government officials were actually coming together to investigate this topic. So And then they were very instrumental in getting credibility to this subject into the US government as well as in the media. Their show Unidentified, 2 seasons of it, was probably the most credible UFO show that I've seen, where they actually got, US Navy personnel, commanders, military personnel to come on camera to describe what they saw with their own 2 eyes. They finally got, military and Navy personnel to come forward on camera and say, yes, look, I saw this. Yes, I saw that. One of the most prominent cases that To the Stars covered, 4 or 5 years ago, was the USS Nimitz encounter, the Tic Tac, in 2004, as well as, the Go Fast video and the Gimbal video, 3 videos that were released by the Pentagon that, finally them saying, no, we don't actually know what this is. Here, they finally released it to the public, and they had, like I said, David Fravor and Ryan Greaves come out and say, yes, look, we saw this. This is what happened. It wasn't just this. There was a whole bunch of them. It was a big step forward. Big step for military personnel to come forward and to try to end the stigma around UFOs. They were trying to really, gain some credibility into this subject, and it was a great step. It worked. Obviously, that was 5 years ago, and it led to what's happening now. 5 years ago, a couple days ago, with Congress, and so the implications that we can take away from this, obviously, there's 3 takeaways that we can get from this congressional hearing. One is obviously to end the stigma around UFOs. Little green men, tinfoil hat, crazy people see this stuff. This stuff doesn't exist. It's swamp gas. You're an idiot if you see. No. The whole point of what they're trying to do with Congress and get government officials and military people to testify is to end the stigma, because this is an actual fact. These things are actually appearing in our airspace, and we can't do anything about it. And the millions of bits of data and evidence, radar data, eyewitness data, physical effects on the ground, is there. It's an actual issue, and they want to end the stigma about this topic. And getting congressional hearings to talk about this with other military personnel, Pentagon officials, is a great step towards taking this matter now serious. Another takeaway implication is to eliminate, third-party intervention. People leaking photos, leaking video, leaking stories to one person, and then they release it to the public. Instead of going up the chain of command where, a military officer, a commander, an Air Force pilot sees this, and instead of reporting it to his superiors, he's got to, leak it to this person, this researcher who releases it to the public. They obviously want to end that middleman thing where people can, military officers or Navy personnel can just say, hey, look, I saw this, and to be taken serious, okay? And another, obviously, takeaway and implication we can take from this is to establish a means of reporting, a reporting system for Navy personnel, for military personnel, to actually report if they see something. Because obviously, over these last several decades, pilots, they're not allowed to say what they saw. They aren't allowed. There's been so many reports. Captain Tarachi, Japanese Airlines, 1986, big case flying over Alaska where he saw this big object in the sky for 10, 15 minutes. He reported it, and then that was his last flight he ever made. He wasn't allowed to fly again because he reported on something that he saw. Obviously, they want to end or create more of a authentic means of reporting, a reporting system where it's okay for pilots, it's okay for Navy officials to report what they saw to end the stigma, right? So there's obviously a lot of good that can come out from this if we start to take it serious, which is what this congressional hearing really is. Now, to strip this back a little more, obviously, in a congressional hearing, now what you guys have to understand around this subject, it is a highly, highly classified subject. Whether you like it or not, it is a highly classified subject. And if you know security clearances, there's classified, bare bones, minimum security clearance, secret, top secret, above top secret, and then you can get into all these other, extremely high classified topics or titles that may or may not exist. But anyway, they held a public briefing, which is basically open to the public. It's just the most general knowledge, okay? And then there's classified meetings behind closed doors, which obviously whoever's privy to that meeting, who has that type of a clearance, then gets to be privy to information that the public can't know because it's need to know. It's now a classified setting. And then so on and so forth. If they hold top secret meetings, then obviously the information revealed in those meetings is obviously more secretive, more lucrative, more composed, obviously, because that's how security clearances work. So what they're telling or discussing in the public hearing is obviously okay for everybody to know. No threat, no real threat. But then behind closed doors, they talk about classified stuff, okay? And so one of these incidents, obviously, that was discussed, there was two incidences that got a lot of attention, and I think it was the open public briefing, was a green triangle video, as well as a video where an object shoots by a military pilot. Now, in the green triangle video, from my understanding, there was a lot of wording that they chose to tiptoe around. They were saying things like pyramidal in shape, triangular in shape. It appears to be, this shape if you look at it through this lens. They were obviously saying things that whoever knows about what this object was couldn't really necessarily say to the public. If you understand UFOs and how to word things properly, you'll understand they were trying to tiptoe around what this thing really could be. As well as they were talking about a video where this object, and it's very tough to see in this video, some type of a gray ball shoots by another military pilot flying by, and it's very difficult to see. But anyway, those are the videos that were talked about and released, and obviously they clearly released those videos to the public hearing because obviously the national security threat around those images, there isn't really much of a threat, okay? There's a reason why a lot of videos and a lot of photos aren't released to the public, because there's a national security threat around them. Or at least the video that they do show of an incident, they can show that particular video, but then a couple minutes before, a couple minutes after, they can't show that because there's national security implications, obviously, okay? So those were the two incidences that were apparently discussed in this hearing, and it's great to talk about. It's a good thing that they were talking about this because it opens the discussion now. They're taking this seriously, which is a huge step, because obviously any UFO buff will know that, in 1969, Project Blue Book was the last official U.S. government official investigation into this topic. And of course, they were really honestly investigating behind the scenes. They just weren't obviously, letting the public know what they were doing, because the official investigation ended in 1969 with Project Blue Book, right? So this is going to be one big step towards, hopefully more hearings, more people, more serious, credible people will come forward to talk about this issue, to end the stigma, because obviously now this is a very legitimate, serious issue. Why? Anybody that has researched this topic knows that there is a serious national security threat. When there are objects, when there are lights, when there is something penetrating our airspace, not just in the US, every country, when there are these things penetrating airspace, restricted airspace, at will, anytime, they can shut down nuclear weapons bases, they can turn on and off nuclear weapons missiles on their own, and we can't do a thing about it. Obviously, it's a national security threat. Obviously, okay? Now, it's in my opinion that they've admitted these types of things over the years is really huge. I guess it's happened to enough countries where, it's okay to share that type of information. And another reason this topic is so highly classified, obviously, because, whether this is ours, theirs, Russia, China, US, internal, you can't share what you know with your adversaries. You can't let them know what you know, and you can't give them information that might tip them off, and then they can start researching this and researching that. You can't do it. So it's obviously been very classified, this whole subject, for a long time for many reasons. A national security threat is a very legitimate reason to not let the public know about what you know. And obviously, I'll end this topic on here. Obviously, another reason this is so highly classified is, let's just say the US, Russia, China understands what this phenomena is to a certain level, and they understand somewhat the technology. That technology obviously becomes a threat to people in the fossil fuel industry, the oil industry, the petroleum industry. If this technology is understood and can be applied, well, who stands to lose from this? The oil industry, the petroleum industry, the fossil fuel industry, the combustion engine is now null and void. You have defense contractors that rely on planes and missiles, given the physics we know, to make a living, to generate so much revenue off the technology that we know now. If this technology becomes, available to the public, look how many people stand to lose a ton of money and a ton of business from this technology being released to the public. So that's another reason why this subject is so highly classified, because the oil and petroleum industry has a ton to gain, a ton to lose. The defense contractors, Raytheon, have a ton to lose. So that's why this subject is so highly classified. But that's neither here nor there. Anyways, this is a huge monumental step going forward, as it should hopefully open the doors for more discussion going forward to take this subject more credible. Because again, when you have things that are penetrating your airspace and you can't do a thing about it, this is a big national security threat. And I'll say one more thing to end. Talk about distractions. This is a distraction. This is just a distraction. They have been distracting us from this topic for decades. This is swamp gas. Those are birds. It's a balloon. You're crazy. Only tinfoil hat wearers notice things like that. You're a kook. You're on alcohol. You're on drugs. You're drunk. They have been distracting us away from this subject for decades, because what is one of the worst things a government can do to its citizens? Literally say, yep, that's there. Yep, these are coming in at will and we can't do nothing about it. It's our job to protect our airspace and we can't do nothing about it. You think a government's going to admit that ever? No. So I'll leave that with you guys. This subject is obviously they've been distracting us away from this subject for decades. Very clearly, there's a distraction for you. So what do you guys think? Not necessarily, maybe, hey, even comment. What do you think UAPs are? What are they? What do they mean? What are the implications of this congressional meeting going forward? Is this a good step to have discussions with officials, with government officials and military personnel coming together and trying to solve this problem? Or should it be left alone? What do you guys think? Comment below. This is, try to keep it to the core of what this topic really is, about the congressional hearing, about government conversation, about opening reporting channels, stuff like that, and avoid the stigma around it, okay? What do you guys think about this whole subject? Let me know. So that's it for today. We will be back another day to talk about another topic soon. But if you're on YouTube, don't forget, please click on this video right there. Very good. And then click on this video and my other videos on my YouTube channel. Very good videos. I put a lot of work into them. And we will be back soon to talk about something else. Thanks, guys.
This is just the start. There are other people that are going to be testifying on record.